My name is Cissy Gore-Birch. I'm the National Aboriginal Engagement Manager with Bush Heritage Australia. So I'm a Kimberley woman and I was brought up on Balangara country. Aboriginal people have been managing this country for 40,000 plus years. So it's very important that we have an organisation like Bush Heritage working together closely to continue to assist with conservation and land management to protect what Aboriginal people have been trying to protect for a very long time. So looking at that two-way science is really important for Bush Heritage and moving forward with that.
So one of the real strengths of any good ranger program and organisation is its partnerships, and Bush Heritage have been a really strong partner in the last few years with Arafura Swamp Rangers, and that partnership has been about helping develop our healthy country plan, our vision for the future, and they've really supported that in providing a lot of the capacity to bring that plan together.
Pullin is the Aboriginal name for the night parrot. Feathers were in our ceremonial headdress used in our major corroborees. It's kind of been reborn, and I find there's a symbiotic relationship now to be involved with Bush Heritage to protect the bird and protect our culture. A large rock like that, and just use a hammerstone and one edge.
It's been a really beneficial exercise. We found some flints, some hammerstones, quite a few small heads that we used as spearheads, but the most important find, or special find really, was a piece of petrified wood which we estimate is about 95 to 98 million years old, and that was in the shape of an axe head.
That's why it's good that Bush Heritage have got us out here doing this, so we can find all this, so they're protected forever.
I think Bush Heritage have got a really good grasp on what we do here as Dja Dja Wurrung people and what our aspirations are, and I would just love to see that even grow a bit more and have our wider Dja Dja Wurrung community understand what Bush Heritage are doing, and build that more connection and I suppose with our families to understand that you know the aspirations of Bush Heritage and what they're doing on their properties are the same as what Dja Dja Wurrungs are.
You've got to go out and do partnership with other people that got the expertise and help that, and let them get involved and work together. And this project proven that yes, we can work together. Hopefully, one of the targets with the Bush Heritage Mob and us local people, hopefully we'll have the golden-shouldered parrot, big mob with them. We're on the borderline of them being gone down and never seeing them again, or whether the project what we're doing now is to bring their population up.
Well, Bush Heritage Australia is really proud to be Olcola's partner of choice for this project, not only to be securing the future of an endangered species, but also to be supporting Olcola traditional owners to care for and to protect one of their most significant cultural totems for future generations.
This is traditional owner land, it always has been and always will be. It's just an absolute privilege to work with Budgety traditional owners, and it's so important that Budgety are involved in continuing to manage their country side by side with us at Bush Heritage.
I promised my mum a long time ago that I'd take care of country, and I have been doing my job pretty good, I think.
Feel good when you're out here, and the rangers are doing good work They're sharing their stories, they're learning, they're passing on knowledge. The older ones are teaching the younger ones about their culture and their language and bush tucker and fire and how to read the landscape, and we're providing or helping them with opportunities to get out on country.
Hi, I'm Heather Campbell and I'm the CEO of Bush Heritage Australia, and I'd like to welcome you to our webinar this evening on Aboriginal Partnerships. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners on the land on which we're meeting, and in my case I'm sitting on Wurundjeri land in the hills of the Yarra Valley on the edge of Melbourne, and I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and pay my respects to the elders of all the lands on which we're sitting tonight. And as I reflect on this, I think back to last year when I was really lucky, and this is, pre-COVID, to be able to spend some time with traditional owners up in the Kimberley, with Woonabulgumbura and Gurrajari people, and to hear their stories and to be out with the elders, out in the landscape, being shown different plants, their medicinal properties, how their actual foods and how to manage that landscape. And it really reinforced to me how little I really know and how important it is for all of us to listen and learn. So tonight we're going to hear from Cissy Gore-Birch, who's going to share some of her stories and why she's involved in this and some of her background and around her family, etc. But before we get started, we just need to do a bit of a technology check. Just because we're all operating in different parts of Australia, I'm actually coming via satellite, so hopefully it's working okay. But if you have any technology challenges at all, we have the marvellous Anna and Karen in the background who will solve all of our problems. So if you've got any questions or concerns around technology or having challenges, then please type away into the chat box and they'll be able to help you out. Also, we want to make sure that we get lots of questions and that we can then answer through a conversation with Cissy, but later on. So when you think of those, please type them in the Q&A area. But in the meantime, just to make sure that we're comfortable with the technology, and I'm sure we all are. I'm sure we're all zoomed out by now. If you'd like to look at the chat function and just think about what has happened in spring that has either made your heart really sing and you've thoroughly enjoyed, or has been a real challenge. And I was just sharing with the team a bit earlier that one of my challenges is spring has brought an influx of wild rabbits. And the small ones are a real pain because they're small enough to get through chicken wire and get to my veggie patch. So that's one of my spring challenges. But if you'd like to type yours or what you may have seen that has made your heart sing. So I know a number of people have seen birds in their gardens or their backyards or their areas that they haven't seen before. And just so that you can share that and we can share some stories from around Australia. But also just making sure that we're comfortable with the technology. So if you want to share that, and hopefully some will come up on the screen soon and I can share them. But also, please, when you think of questions, type them in the Q&A so that when we get to the questions later on, it's easy enough for me to grab them and we can have that discussion with Cissy and look forward to having that discussion. We're going to start off tonight with just a little tiny video. We've obviously also shared one as we came into this webinar, but we'd like to share one about fire. We know how challenging the black summer was, and it was devastating for much of Australia. We want to share a video we made about fighting fire with fire and the importance of traditional knowledge and how traditional owners use fire in managing the landscape. And through this very short video, you will hear Cissy's voice explaining how we utilise fire. So, keep typing away in the chat function as you are at the moment, and I can see a number of things about, people talking about beautiful seasons of the birds, being out on the reserves in South Australia. Unfortunately, we've seen what's happened in South Australia today and everybody's heading home for the next 6 days, but it's been great to be able to have people out there. But just keep typing away while we watch this Fighting with Fire video. So over to the team to put that up.
Fire has the power to harm the land, but also to heal the land. Our people have been listening and watching how fires move across Australia for more than 60,000 years. We have so much to teach the world about how to manage fire. The recent bushfire crisis has been devastating for all Australians. More than 18 million hectares of our country has been burnt. More than 1 billion animals have been impacted by the recent fires. As the original custodians of this land, that really hurts us deeply. Right Way Fire is burning country at the right time, in the right conditions, to encourage regrowth and regeneration. Lots of Australian ecosystems need fire for new life, but it needs to be the right way fire. In a lot of places, we can't do right way fire anymore because we don't have access to country. The cities are getting bigger and most people don't understand fire. As the world gets hotter and drier and our bushfire seasons become more intense, our traditional knowledge will show us a way forward. If fire is done the right way, country will look after us, our plants, our animals, and their habitats.
We just wanted to share that video with you because it shares some of the examples of how we work together with traditional owners and understanding how to effectively manage this land, and how traditional owners have been doing it for centuries, and the opportunity for us to relearn some of that knowledge with how we manage different landscapes. Can I also just say a big thank you to everybody who has been typing in the chat? And I know some of you are from areas that were impacted by the Black Summer fires, and our hearts go out to all of you and the communities impacted. But thank you for those that have been typing away. We've had lots of comments about kookaburras, about yellow-tailed black cockatoos, about seeing species come into the suburbs that we might not have noticed before, and to be on the lands of different traditional owners. We're now going to move up to Kununurra, and I'd like to introduce you to Cissy Gore-Birch. So Cissy is an amazing woman, and she's coming from us from her home. And we're working on the philosophy that hopefully technology will be stable. And as you'd all appreciate, we all have kids, everything else. So if you hear a few weird noises from either of us, it's because an animal has decided to be noisy, or a child has appeared. But Cissy is an amazing leader. Very much a leader across northern parts of Australia, but more broadly. She sits on a number of Commonwealth committees, has held leadership roles in the Kimberley, is a very proud woman from the Kimberley area, and she'll be able to share some of her background and her family. And Cissy has been instrumental, along with other staff in our Aboriginal engagement team, and helping us as Bush Heritage explore and expand our partnerships with traditional owners and do it in a way that's deeply respectful, in a way where we're embedding right way science approach and learning together. And this has been critical for our development as we work towards continuing to deliver on our vision of healthy country protected forever. So Cissy's here with us. we decided that because technology can be a little bit jittery, that we'd actually pre-record Cissy's presentation, but we'll both be here through the whole thing, and then we'll be taking questions and answers. But Cissy, did you just want to say a quick hi before we actually move to the pre-recorded video that we got you to do?
Sure, Heather, thank you. And yeah, welcome to everybody who's on the webinar tonight. We really appreciate you making the time to listen in to the stories about the Aboriginal partnerships. And as Heather has alluded, just we will be having a Q&A after the session, so keep your questions open, and we're looking forward to answering them at the end. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Cissy. So please, everybody, remember, type your questions as they come up. So this time, rather than type them in the chat, please type them in the question Q&A little box, and we will make sure that we get to all of those questions. But enjoy Cissy sharing her story.
Okay, my name is Cissy Gore-Birch. I'm the Executive Manager for Aboriginal Engagement with Bush Heritage Australia. Today we're talking about the Aboriginal Partnerships program, and Heather's given that brief overview of what we're going to be talking about and looking at Aboriginal partnerships within Bush Heritage. I'm going to be presenting some slides to everybody, and I guess before I start, I'd like to also look at the acknowledgement of what country I sit on today. I am saying hello to everybody on the webinar from Mirong country up in the far north, East Kimberley, Australia, Western Australia, right up near Kununurra. So today I'm sitting here in Kununurra, and I'd like to also encourage everybody on the end of the line to possibly send through or just message us and to acknowledge the country that you're sitting on today and where we're presenting from. So before any presentation, I'd also like just to share my journey and my story and my connection, my passion, and why I'm here, I guess, as a employee of Bush Heritage, but also as a traditional owner. I usually like to share this slide of myself and my family and what's really important to us and our country, our culture, and looking after and managing country. So the first photo is with me fishing on country and looking at management of our waterways and making sure that our children and our next generation are aware of the importance of looking after the fresh water on country, but also the livelihoods that really depend on our waterways. The middle photo is of my family, my partner and my 5 children. This was on a trip that we took out on a 14-day tour off country, and we had no phone reception. We were the only ones out on country, and this is something that's really important and close to me. I'd like to also just share that information and my knowledge and my upbringing with my children, and to expose them to the importance of being on country and looking after country and practicing our laws and our customs of getting out on country. The other photo is of myself throwing the throw net, is really trying to look at, I guess, again, management of waterways, but also looking at sustainable harvesting and sustainable hunting, in hunting for the day and hunting for what we need for the day, and I guess showing my children the importance of being safe out on country, because I was actually throwing a net in crocodile-infested waters, so where crocodiles actually nest, and we were catching some bait to go fishing. The middle picture is of my young daughter who was participating in the Indigenous protected areas when we got our native title, and we had our registered native title meeting, and it was declared by the judge on that day, and we had our traditional dancers coming in from Columbaroo and around the surrounding areas of Balangara country to celebrate the ceremony of our native title and our Indigenous protected areas becoming declared. The picture of the 4-wheel drive is on country, us going out on our 14-day trek. So as you can see, it's very isolated, and this is something that a lot of our people were out on country in their homelands, and they spoke their languages and really looked after and managed country for many, many thousands of years. The picture on the bottom is of the rock art. So we're really working in with our universities, so UWA and Rock Art Australia, previously known as Kimberley Foundation Australia. They fund our project to really manage all our different rock art sites around, so getting our traditional owners and our ranger programs connected up with country and looking at mapping all our different sites and how we protect our sites against deteriorating with fire damage, and looking at feral animals and keeping them away from those different sites of significance, and our protecting our rock art and our stories. And the last picture was just of my children out on country, just, I guess, celebrating the openness of where we went to and enjoying the space and taking care of what's important to us. So Aboriginal Partnerships. So this is a great picture of one of our longest Aboriginal partnerships on Aboriginal held land. This picture was taken up at Woonabulgumbura country, and it's a great slide of right-way burning. So this fire was taken during the dry season, in the cooler seasons of the year, and to really look at the controlled burning. So this fire was done by Woonabulgumbura and our traditional owners up on country, really looking at that management of that forest, thick forest area on the coastline of Woonabulgumbura country, based up in the north part of Western Australia, again up in the Kimberley. So as you can see, this is a beautiful country, access to salt water country, but also fresh water, and looking at the importance of that right-way fire and management. And this is something that Bush Heritage really values in our partnerships, is really partnering with our partners to be able to take control of the management of their country. And it's been a real privilege for Bush Heritage to partner with our Aboriginal partnerships on country, but also on how we can work together in making sure that, you know, it's a collective approach and no one can do it on their own. And that's why partnerships is really important and vital to Bush Heritage. So our vision, healthy country protected forever. This is something that Bush Heritage has held for some time. Healthy country protected, what does that actually mean? Forever. And this is something that I take away with me, and my I guess my belief in working with Bush Heritage is, how do we protect healthy country forever? And how do we do this together? Unfortunately, Bush Heritage can't do this on its own. And this is why it's important to partner with many partners around Australia. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to work in this with Bush Heritage, to be able to look after the Aboriginal partnerships, but to really work in this strategic team and within Bush Heritage on making this happen. Our partnerships right across Australia is very important to us. And to be able to do this, we have to do it together. And our purpose, to return the bush to good health. This is, again, something that Aboriginal people has managed for over 60,000 years, is looking after our country, protecting it forever, but also returning the bush to good health. As you would know, a lot of our country has been damaged either by mining or a lot of feral animals coming in and prodding on the country and destroying our waterways through different feral animals coming through, but also the impacts of people and land clearance and extracting water from our waterways has really impacted on our country. And this is why it's really important for us as Bush Heritage to partner not only with Aboriginal partnerships, but also to partner with the agriculturalists, and to partner with private landholders, and to partner with other environmental NGOs around Australia, and also the corporate. So this is something that, you know, we have to do this together as a collective, as a nation, to be able to have our vision shared, but also have our vision followed through, to be able to have a healthy country protected forever and to return our bush to good health. So these are just some stats, just to give our broader audience just some idea of how much land we're actually managing through the Aboriginal partnerships, but also across Bush Heritage Australia. There is about 11.3 million hectares. It's probably been updated since then. 1.2 million hectares are on our reserves, and 10.1 million hectares through our partnerships around Australia. And this is why, you know, we can talk about the importance of partnerships, because we can actually cover a lot more land space in working in across our partnerships across the nation. Within that, we have over 6,359 native species and 243 threatened species. So 71 of those species are endangered. And working in our partnerships, this is something that our traditional owners take seriously, is looking after our threatened species, but also looking after those species that are of cultural significance, and working together with our with the government and our partners and our private landholders in protecting those species of significance to all Australians living in this country. So I thought it would be great to share this map with all our listeners on the end, is to really look at our partnerships and how it really captures our nation across all the different regions. So the blue dots are our Aboriginal partnerships. On our reserves, the red partnerships are our partnerships on reserves, and the green is other. So the blue dots, represent our Aboriginal partnerships on Aboriginal held land. And as you can see, a lot of that is up at the northern part of Australia. And that's where I manage most of our projects across Northern Australia. And we have managers who are operating on our reserves, who are managing those partnerships on our reserves. So as you can see, it's really spread right across the nation. We don't only work up in Northern Australia, but we work right across the nation, and we take partnerships very seriously. This photo was taken up at Gurrudjeri country when Heather and I visited a couple of years ago now, and we were fortunate enough to be able to stay on country with the traditional owners and to be exposed to the stories and looking at gatherings of bush tucker and bush medicine and working in with our women's ranger program out there. And this is something that Bush Heritage has invested in really looking at the impacts of our women rangers and the work that they're doing on country and the importance of it, because women in the past have always been the nurturers of our communities or our families. But they're mothers, they are grandmothers, they are sisters. These women are actually, they're passionate about working on country and making a difference. And this program that we're working in with Gurrudjeri has really impacted on that and really made a huge difference. And this is something that we'll continue to support in moving forward and progressing forward. So this slide here, we talk about Aboriginal partnerships and how Aboriginal partnerships can come in partnership with Bush Heritage Australia. And this is Woonabulgumbra. So that initial photo of the lovely blue ocean and the fire management that was happening on country was actually on country with Woonabulgumbra. So the initial conversations around this was how did we partner with Woonabulgumbra? These initial conversations came through earlier on the stage, nearly about 10 years ago, on developing this partnership and how do we actually make this happen. So the open standards management, through the open standards, we were able to look at developing an open standards model that will integrate the traditional owners' information and knowledge in coming together. So it's not a Western system, but also bringing in the Western system of how we do open standard planning, bringing that together from a cultural perspective. So healthy country planning was born out of those conversations with Woonabulgumbra and Bush Heritage. So Woonabulgumbra were the first ones who developed the healthy country planning with Bush Heritage, and how we were able to adapt some of these Western conversations to bring traditional owners to integrate the importance of those conversations. So capturing the aspirations of our traditional owners in a way that was going to make a bigger impact on country, and not only protecting the conservation, but looking at the cultural aspects, looking at what was really important for the traditional owners in these different sites of significance, and really monitoring the country that was going to make a huger impact for our future generations. So the Healthy Country was born through this partnership with Woonabulgumbra, and taking into consideration the open standards through the Western system on how we can actually make that happen right across the nation. So the Healthy Country planning process is now embedded into everything that we do within Bush Heritage. So when we're initially having that session with partnerships, we have the healthy country planning, looking at the aspirations of our traditional owners. How do we capture that? And really inviting our traditional owners to take the lead on that. And we come in as a partner to be able to support the implementation of those aspirations and those strategies, and looking at those different targets that really make an impact on supporting our partnerships in moving to that next stage. So this particular partnership is at its level of consolidated. They have been with us for a very long time. we're now going through a process of the evaluations of our long-term partnerships to be able to look at how do we move to the next phase of really developing and looking at the succession of this partnership to moving to the next level. So before I finish, I know it's been a really sort of quick presentation on our partnerships, but this is something that we don't take lightly within Bush Heritage. We are very serious about working in partnerships right across the nation with our fellow Aboriginal colleagues, our land managers, our corporates. We would like to encourage everyone, if you would like to have more information or have access to any of this information in moving forward, if you know of anybody who's willing to partner with us or anyone on the call who would like to come along with us on this journey, please don't hesitate to give me a call. My contact details are attached, and we look forward to moving together in the future in addressing some of these really important issues in partnering with our fellows in looking after country, protecting our country forever, and bringing back country to its natural form. Thank you.
Thanks, Cissy. It was great to hear that. We have got comments coming in as well as questions. So we've been using the chat function, and thank you to everybody who's been sharing the land on which they're currently sitting and amazing things that they're seeing in summer, from flannel flowers to kangaroos visiting suburban streets. So thank you for that. Can you please now try and use the Q&A function so that we can actually get those questions up and I can put them to Cissy. So the first one, Cissy, is from Kim, and she'd like to know, what do women rangers do, and is it different from what the male rangers do?
No, there's not a lot of difference, Kim, with the Women Ranger programs. I think there's just different priorities and aspirations that women would like to focus on. So depending on the partnership. So we have women going out and doing surveys. We have women really focusing on the medicinal plants and bringing those plants together and creating small enterprise through oils and food sources. We have women rangers who are changing tires, who are doing chainsaw training. So they vary right through, and there's not sort of one role for women and one role for the men. I think it just depends on the team and what sort of work and priorities that they want to focus on throughout their work plan, throughout their year. So yes, there's not a lot of difference. It just really depends on the priorities of the programs and the groups.
But I presume, Cissy, that there are certain sites or areas related to women's business that only women rangers might go to, and the same would be true of the male rangers. I presume that's the case?
That's correct.
Yeah, great. Thanks. Just changing tact a little bit, and we've got a great question from Rowena, and it's talking about, we often hear a lot about, using fire to prevent fires and the importance of cultural burning, but we also understand that, we've got this challenge in Australia of feral animals, whether that be, rabbits, deer, pig, buffalo, etc. And just wondering if that, because of the impact of those feral animals, particularly on native species, are there any particular, say, native, species, native animals, which are particularly important for how whether they dig up, ground material, how they, deal with leaf litter or twigs, that also help sort of reduce that probability of fire? So I suppose the question is, are there animals in the landscape, native animals, that actually also, because of what they do, help prevent fires?
Definitely, there would be different species, I guess, that rely on the litter on the ground. But just in regards to preventing, I mean, there's this story that I guess pastoralists commonly use about the ferals. The donkeys are the ones who prevent the fire. They actually develop the fire lines, or they create these fire lines to be able to stop the fires from jumping. So that's a lot of ferals. But just in regards to natives, there's lots of birds who scratch up and lots of birds are nesting. But I really can't really go into much detail in that, because I just know of certain native species who rely on that litter and to be able to build their nest and to be able to be protected by the bushland in its natural way.
I think just a little bit further to that, I think it would be useful if you could actually help us understand cultural, burning practices and the fact that it's not hot fires and it doesn't remove all the litter, etc. So, do you just want to explain that a little bit more for people so they, understand, how cultural burning practices are undertaken?
I can explain it from my own experience. I'm not a fire ecologist, but as a traditional owner, I've been a part of fire practices in watching fire undertake at certain seasons. And fire is used in many forms. So with fire, a lot of our traditional owners used it in a way to for hunting. So they would create fires to be able to draw in different animals or to draw certain animals to a certain space and area. And just in regards to the cool burn, so every there's the fire practices throughout the different seasons are really important. Fire is practiced through cultural burns. So cultural burns are for ceremony, so during cleansing, and different seasons with different native fruits and vegetation and regeneration of different foods and coming up for the different seasons.
Thanks, Cissy. A little bit of a different one, although we've already touched a little bit on the challenges of managing ferals. So, do traditional owners that you're aware of have any particular ways, novel ways of managing the joys of foxes, cats, or cane toads, or fire ants, or rabbits? Any particular ways of being able to, I was going to say, outfox or outcat a cat through, trapping techniques or anything?
Well, up here in Northern Australia, there has been a huge issue with the cane toads, and there's been a number of research projects happening with traditional owners on, I guess, creating little sausages or bits of meat from a cane toad and feeding it to the goannas to look at their memory, to be able to warn them of the cane toads. But I think, some of those researches are still to be proven, and to be able to look at, the protection of even quolls on islands. So these different cane toad sausages and are being practiced around the Kimberleys, but to be able to keep the cane toads away, I think, there's still a lot more research to be done, unfortunately. And there is a lot of damage right across Northern Australia with our native species.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Cissy. Changing tact again, the partnerships that Bush Heritage has with traditional owners. I've got a question here from Helen as to whether they're focused purely on cultural and country management, or are there broader economic benefits that are occurring because of that support and the focus of the programs?
Sorry, Heather, can you just repeat that question? You just sort of cut out a bit.
Yeah, sorry, and I apologise if my connection's not great, but the partnerships that we have, Bush Heritage has with traditional owners, are often focusing on cultural and on country management, ecological management. Just people are wondering if there's a economic benefit, beyond rangers, being paid for their time. But are there other economic benefits that you're starting to see with the focus of management of country and people supporting that?
Definitely. There's now the carbon abatement project that's available through the Savannah Burning Project right across Northern Australia. So a lot of our rangers have tapped into that over the last number of years, and also looking at the fee for service, so environmental services, offering that service to the pastoralists and also private landholders. And also looking at small enterprise through the bush medicines and the use that are coming through from a lot of the women ranger programs, and also looking at the seed banking projects that are coming right across Northern Australia, and looking at the native fruits and vegetation.
All right. Thanks, Cissy. Another question from Ariane is, how do traditional owners actually make decisions about priorities for the ranger work? So what is it that guides that decision-making process?
Well, that process, I've spoken about it just in the presentation about the Healthy Country Plan. So the Healthy Country Plan is developed with elders and traditional owners coming together, looking at those aspirations and looking at those different targets they want to focus on over the 5 to 10 years. And through that is develop a work plan, and they set priorities through that in regards to what work they undertake on country, and really involving their traditional owners through their Healthy Country Culture Advisory Committees, and through their prescribed body corporates of what is important for the traditional owners, and the priorities around where they conduct fire, and the activities on freshwater monitoring. So it really depends on the season, and it also depends on the aspirations for that year, and depending on what the season brings. So it could be reacting to the big fires from the previous years. It could be reacting to the big floods. But most of the decisions are really driven from the healthy country planning process and the aspirations that are caught up in that.
Thanks. Next, I suppose, changing tack just slightly a bit, but there's a question here from Craig as to whether there are any traditional owners involved with tourism enterprises on their country. Obviously, I'm aware of Warrnambool and the work that they're doing with their people being involved with tourism and the permitting system that they have for visitors up in that country. But do you want to share a bit more about that one, or some other examples that you might have from the different partnerships?
Yeah, no, this is something I think that's definitely growing amongst the traditional owners, especially now that a lot of traditional owners have access to country through native title, through land rights, and through different settlements right across the nation. But I've seen a number of traditional owners taking ownership on the tourism side of things. So individuals have taken on 4-drive trekkings, individuals have taken on, the tourism industry with accommodation and hospitality. Resorts, Cooljaman is a great example up in the peninsula, an Indigenous-led tourist resort, and even through a lot of the ranger programs. So, these conversations are still happening, and it just always goes back to the resourcing. It always goes back to the skills that are required and the partners. So this is something that, I think a lot of traditional owners would like to open that up to potential partners out there to really, show their support, because a lot of traditional owners are really struggling. We don't receive a lot of funds to be able to undertake this, and a lot of our people really don't understand which way to go, because there's all these different programs conflicting, and it's very controversial because in the past, a lot of our traditional owners didn't have access, but there was a lot of non-Indigenous tour operators happening on country, and just trying to work out those, those concerns, and how do we bring that together to be able to complement the work, and to be able to open that industry up, and to, make sure that it's a fair process, that traditional owners always are also getting that opportunity to showcase their knowledge and their experience and their country to the broader society around.
All right, thanks, Cissy. A question here from Anna is, can you tell us a little bit about the seed gathering and storing that's happening with different groups?
Yeah, so there's the seed banking program that's happening up here, and probably right across Australia, with the native plants. So a lot of our traditional owners and our ranger programs have now gone into the seed banking, and looking at the bush medicines and the native seeds and regrowth, and looking at, eventually, taking on contracts, selling native plants, and just keeping those plants, because just with fire damage, there's been a lot of fire damage with a lot of native plants. So we've lost probably a number of plants through a lot of hot fires. So it's really important that our traditional owners are now taking that really seriously, and also others, that the importance of the regeneration program of keeping those seeds banked up and protected, but also looking at, regrowth and replanting around on our lands.
Yeah, thanks for that, Cissy. There's a question here which I might start answering, and then ask if you want to contribute to more of the answer. But it's from Kirsten, and it's asking about how a lot of our partnerships have formed. And did traditional owners reach out to us at Bush Heritage, or is it usually the other way around? And I think from my perspective as CEO, what makes us quite different is the fact that it's about traditional owners reaching out to us. We don't impose ourselves. upon traditional owners. It's about relationships, and it's about traditional owners leading the way, not about us as Bush Heritage trying to impose a pathway forward on traditional owners. But do you want to add anything to that one, Cissy?
Yeah, that's correct, Heather. So just, I guess what I really admire about the work that we do within Bush Heritage is the way we operate. And we don't force ourselves onto traditional owners, so we are definitely on invitation only. So the traditional owners would reach out to us, invite us to be able to come along to a conversation, and then we start that relationship. And this relationship is not only a short term. A great example that I shared before in my slide, with Wunnable Gumbra being one of our longest partnerships. So that's been over 10 years of partnership with the traditional owners in Wunnable Gumbra. So once we start the conversation, we're not going to go away. It's more about how do we make sure that this partnership is genuine. And if the traditional owners are happy with us and progressing forward, we then go to the next stage of how we can actually support the traditional owners' aspirations. So the way we approach things, it's not about us as Bush Heritage forcing ourselves onto anybody. It's more about the invitation and making sure that it's a genuine partnership and a long-term relationship.
Thanks, Cissy. I think we've probably got time for one last question. So thank you to everybody that's put the questions in. So the question is from Marina, asking if there are any photos or explanations of the various plants that traditional owners know about on the Bush Heritage Reserves. And I think from memory, I know at Naree there's been a little booklet and a sort of a walking trail produced by Budgety explaining the different plants. I'm not sure how much of this is available on our website, but I also do know that there has been quite a number of the traditional owners that we're in partnership with have been producing those resources. But Cissy, did you want to share any that you're aware of?
Yeah, just in regards to the reserves, I know this is something that our partnerships are wanting to look at, I guess, developing and going into more detail with our ecologist and also with our Aboriginal managers on the reserves. But just in regards to the partnerships program right across Northern Australia, a lot of partnerships have been working on this for a number of years. And it's not a book that sort of, the information that's taken lightly. We've just recently developed our own plants and animal book, and it's actually taken us over 14 years to develop, with a lot of information from our traditional owners along the way. But there is a lot of resources out there with the plants and animal books right across Northern Australia. You can probably find that in most universities also. And also looking at contacting the Aboriginal partnerships for more information.
Thanks heaps for that. And look, there's a number of people coming up in the chat function talking about, like Wunnable Gumbra, has a plant book for sale. A number of the different traditional owner groups do. So if you're looking for something particular in your area, I'd suggest do a bit of Googling or reach out to us and we'll see if we can make some connections for you. So unfortunately, we've got to sort of the end of the evening, and Cissy, thank you for so much for sharing, your insights and some of the work. We could actually be spending the whole evening in the next week basically talking about these partnerships. And I think one of the real gems is being able to be out on country. And I, as I said, I just love that time with Garajari round the campfire, sharing stories, understanding, sort of immersing myself there with the traditional owners. So, really special time. And I'd encourage everybody, when COVID restrictions lift, and we know it's a challenging time, to get to different parts of the country and share in the country, experience tourism operations led by traditional owners and really support the communities in that. So Cissy, if there's any sort of final words that you'd like to share with everybody before we close off for the evening.
Something that's probably come up in a number of conversations, Heather, just in regards to the fire video. This is something that's been close to everybody's heart, I guess, around the nation. And just listening to some of those testimonies that happened with the hot fires over in the East Coast, There's been actually some consequences that's come from that, especially with the fire regime and the fire practices up here, up in the north. It's really affected and made a huge impact on the insurances for traditional owners to undertake the fire management for this coming year. So the insurances have actually risen so much that it's actually going to stop an impact on traditional owners and ranger programs to undertake their fire activities for next year. So this is something that we're working on, I guess, internally, but also as a region and right across in Northern Australia. And how do we actually address this to make sure that the fire practices continue and to make sure that right way fire continues right across Australia, but in a way that it's not going to make a huge impact. So the insurances are definitely impacting on that work for next year. So just to let everybody know, just to keep an eye out of these conversations. A lot of people may not be aware of those conversations. And if you'd like to know more information, I'm really happy to, I'd be happy to have that conversation. But there's also been an article, I think, through The Guardian a couple of weeks ago that that sort of talked about the impacts with the Savannah burning projects, but fire across Northern Australia. So keep an eye out that. But that's all I wanted to share, and I just wanted to thank everybody for being online. Again, I love the face-to-face conversation. This Zoom thing, it's a different approach for me, and sometimes I do struggle with, but it's great that we're able to share, my stories and my experiences. But if you ever have an opportunity to meet me face-to-face, I'll be, I'm a bit of a hugger, but I know with COVID, I'm not going to be able to give the hugs, but maybe the elbows. But definitely keen to catch up with anybody for a yarn. This is something that I've been passionate about for a long time. So I've been with Bush Heritage for nearly 5 years, and Bush Heritage has really supported this movement, and really going out at the way to really embrace the Aboriginal partnerships through the work that we do, and really integrating it throughout the organisation, and also taking note that we are building our organisation to be a culturally competent organisation. We have a great team working through this, and Bush Heritage has been really leading the way, I feel, and really looking forward to, the next 5 to 10 years maybe, and really encouraging everybody to get on board with us, because this work is really important. We wouldn't be able to do the work that we're doing if we didn't have partners like yourselves on the line. But just to introduce ourselves and to be able to share that story with others, we welcome that a lot. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Cissy. And Aboriginal partnerships are critical for us delivering our vision of healthy country protected forever. And we know we can only do it through partnerships and through doing it together. If you'd like to hear more from Cissy, then please reach out, or have a look at some of the NAIDOC Week material from last week. And if you're wanting to see Cissy on screen, then last week's Insight program on SBS On Demand, so you can find it streaming there, where Cissy was part of a panel talking about Indigenous mentors. So there's lots of material out there if you want to know more, but would love to hear from you all. Please stay safe. We're now just going to finish off with one of our small videos talking about Bush Heritage as we all sign off. Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening.